Okay, I want to start today's deep dive with a line from one of the documents we have here that honestly just stopped me cold.
Oh, yeah.
It's from a classified document, Operator Training 2026, Module 7. And it's talking about that exact moment when everything goes wrong. Total blackout, systems failing, the absolute worst case.
Hmm.
And it says, quote, "In these moments, the manual ends. You are the background radiation."
It's a chilling line, isn't it?
It is.
But it's also, I think, incredibly empowering. It really sets the stage for what we're looking at today.
The 1% cognitive contingency.
Exactly.
And just to, frame this for everyone, we're talking about a technical doctrine for beyond design basis events.
Which is just a very fancy way of saying the apocalypse has officially arrived at your facility.
Right, so 99% of the time, operators are just living in a world of compliance. They follow the procedures, the EOPs, they check the boxes.
Sure, that's the job. But this document, this is for that other 1%. That terrifying black swan event where the entire infrastructure, the whole system, is based on a reality that, well, that just doesn't exist anymore.
So the mission here, for us, is to figure out what happens when that authority just collapses. What do you do when the instruction manual is actually wrong?
And how do you handle that psychologically? Being the person of last resort, it's about that shift,
Yep.
from being just a compliant operator to becoming an adaptive master.
It's what happens when the map breaks, but you still have to navigate the territory.
Yeah, precisely.
So let's get into this idea of authority collapse, because the document has this diagram that I found. Fascinating.
Oh, the normal state versus the 1% state.
Yes.
Yeah, this is absolutely critical. In a normal state, authority flows up.
Right. You have a problem, you call engineering, you call management. It goes up the chain.
And the hierarchy works. It works because the lines are open and the problems are, understood within the system.
But then you hit that 1% state, a station blackout, and suddenly all the arrows on the chart they flip.
They completely reverse. In a total crisis, authority collapses down. The executives, the politicians, even the offsite engineers, they can't help you.
You can't see the physics.
Not at all. So all the decision-making authority for the physics of that plant, it rests entirely with the on-scene supervisor.
That is it's such a heavy burden. It's basically saying no one is coming to save you. You are the CEO of the reactor core right now.
And that creates this huge conflict, which the doctrine calls the dual cognition model.
Two universes colliding.
Two universes. First, you have the tactical universe. That's the operator.
And their world is just pure thermodynamics.
Yeah.
Sensory data. Is the pipe hot? Is the valve open? And the time scale is seconds.
Seconds, exactly. But then you have the strategic universe, and that's HQ, the executives.
And their focus isn't on thermodynamics.
No. It's political control, legal liability, public perception, optics. Their timescale isn't seconds, it's news cycles.
And that's the friction point. The document says this leads to elite panic and something called whipsawing.
You see it in disaster management all the time. The strategic universe, the bosses, they are absolutely freaking out about the press release, while the tactical universe, the operators, are just trying to prevent a meltdown.
And the bosses try to force their timeline onto the tactical reality.
Which is impossible. So if you're that operator, you're not just fighting physics, you're fighting immense organizational pressure.
And you're supposed to rely on your procedures. Which brings us to this great metaphor they use, anchors versus shackles.
I love this. It's such a brilliant way to think about rules.
So an anchor.
A procedure is an anchor when it stabilizes you. It prevents panic. It maintains team habits. It's that slow is smooth, smooth is fast idea. When everything is shaking, the anchor keeps you grounded.
But an anchor can also drag you straight to the bottom.
And that's when it becomes a shackle. A procedure becomes a shackle when following it strictly actually threatens safety. Why? Because the manual is trying to operate equipment that, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist anymore.
Right. The example they give is perfect. A step in the manual says, open valve X. But valve X needs air pressure, and the air compressor has been, destroyed.
Exactly. If you just stare at that manual trying to follow that step, you're shackled. You are locked in what they call a procedural rigidity walk.
You're trying to connect with infrastructure that's gone.
So how do you know the difference? In the heat of that moment, how do you tell an anchor from a shackle?
There's a litmus test.
Yeah, you have to ask one question. Does the infrastructure assumed by this step actually exist?
Does the DC power exist? Does the cooling water exist?
Right. And if the answer is no, you are shackled, and you have to break free.
Which brings us to the case study they used to prove this whole theory.
Fukushima. This is the ultimate validation. At Fukushima, the operators knew their procedures assumed that DC power was available. But the tsunami had just wiped out the batteries.
So no DC power.
It was gone. If they had just followed the manual, they would have just been staring at blank screens.
Frozen.
Total inaction. Instead, they realized the manual was a shackle.
And they went out to the parking lot.
They went to the parking lot, they scavenged car batteries, and they literally wired them up to the instrumentation just to get readings.
It's like something out of a movie. But the document has a specific term for this. Technically defensible improvisation.
And that phrase is so key. Technically defensible. They weren't just being cowboys. They weren't being rebels.
They were basing it on physics.
Fundamental physics. They needed voltage, so they went and found voltage. And that is the difference between chaos and competence.
Yeah, it really reframes the whole idea of compliance, doesn't it? Sometimes compliance is the most dangerous thing you can do. This tension, it also brings up another conflict the source talks about. Technical justice versus social justice.
This is where it gets really philosophical, but it's so practical.
Okay, so social justice. That's management, the public.
Right. It's PR, regulations, saving face, avoiding lawsuits.
That's basically, how is this going to look on the news?
Exactly. And the pressure from social justice is almost always to delay the harsh actions.
Like venting radioactive steam.
Nobody wants to do that. It looks terrible. It scares people.
Yeah.
So the social justice pressure is to wait, to hope, to avoid that bad headline.
But then there's technical justice.
Which is the cold, hard reality of physics. Thermodynamics does not care about your stock price. It doesn't care about the election cycle.
If the core melts, the social consequences are kind of irrelevant.
Because you've already lost the plant.
So the operator's role is to be the guardian of technical justice.
That is their mandate. The document is so explicit, it says, fight for the plant. You have to advocate for the technical solution immediately, even if it's unpopular, even if management is screaming at you to wait.
You serve the physics.
You serve the physics.
Wow. That requires incredible mental discipline, which is a perfect segue to the next section on cognitive bandwidth.
Ah, the dog bowl.
I love this analogy.
It's so simple, but it's profound. The idea is that your cognitive bandwidth, your brain's processing power, is finite. You can only feed one dog bowl at a time.
And in this 1% scenario, the dog bowl is...
cool the core. That's it. That is the only mission.
Everything else is a distraction.
Everything, the document calls them dog piles of distraction.
Administrative hurdles, phone calls from VPs, minor alarms that just don't matter anymore.
And the directive is ruthless. It says, if an action does not help fill the dog bowl, ruthlessly ignore it. You have to literally step over the piles of nonsense to get the job done.
This also gets into communication strategy, right? The text mentions filter up and filter down.
Yeah, information hygiene. Filtering up means you do not send raw data to headquarters.
Why not?
Because if you send them a stream of raw numbers, they will try to interpret them, and they will almost certainly get it wrong. And that leads to micromanagement.
So you're saying context instead.
Context and intent, not temps are 400 degrees. It's we are seeing rising temps, so we are taking action to vent. You control the narrative so they don't panic.
Okay, and filtering down.
That's for your own crew. There's a great line. Emotional containment is a technical skill. You do not burden your board operators with existential dread. If you, as the supervisor, look terrified, they're going to be terrified. You filter the fear out. You give them task focus. Check that valve. Monitor that level. Keep them in the moment.
It's like being a parent in a storm. You don't tell the kids the roof might blow off.
You just tell them to get the flashlights. Visible composure is a survival tool.
Okay, let's go back to those bosses. We mentioned elite panic.
It's a very real phenomenon. Executives, they're removed from the scene, right? So they often react to single data spikes. One bad reading comes in and they pivot the entire strategy.
Then the reading changes and they pivot back.
And that's whipsawing.
That sounds exhausting for the people on the ground.
It's worse than exhausting. It's dangerous. You can't execute a strategy if the orders change every 5 minutes based on noise.
So the doctrine proposes a solution. The goalpost strategy.
I love this. It's so practical. You basically set boundaries for them.
Right.
You give management a wide operational range. You say, look, as long as the plant status stays between these goalposts, say pressure between 50 and 100 psi, we are on plan. I will only call you if the data leaves the goalposts.
And that buys you silence.
It buys you control room silence. It lets the data bake. You need time to see if what you're doing is working. The goalpost strategy creates a buffer zone so the operators can actually work.
Speaking of information control, there's a term in here, the garble gap. What is that?
Oh, the garble gap is insidious. In any crisis center, you have liaisons, spies, people who aren't essential, but they're listening in. They overhear a brainstorming idea, a what-if scenario, and they text it to someone at HQ. Suddenly, that what-if is being treated as a fact by the executives.
So how do you fight that?
Sidebar meetings. You have the meeting after the meeting. You keep the really sensitive, messy brainstorming private, away from the liaison.
You only present the final plan.
The finalized plan goes to the main room. It stops the rumors from leaking out and becoming false facts. It's tactical secrecy.
Okay, we've talked about what to do, but how on earth do you train for this? You can't just read a PDF and be ready for the end of the world.
No, you can't. And the source is very critical of standard training because standard training just tests compliance.
Can you follow the arrow from box A to box B?
Exactly. But for this, you have to train for failure. You have to design friction.
You force the assumptions to fail.
The instructors are told to create scenarios where the book leads to a dead end,
Right.
or worse, to a meltdown.
They call it the ocean of silence, right? The data just disappears.
Yes. Remove the trends. Introduce ambiguity. Make the operator guess. You have to force them into a choice. Do I follow the rule and die, or do I break the rule and live?
But there's a trap there, isn't there? If you just break rules, you're a cowboy.
And nobody wants a cowboy running a reactor.
So how do you grade that? How do you tell the difference between a technician and a cowboy?
This is maybe the most important part of the training. The metric is articulation.
Articulation.
The trainee has to articulate why the procedure is a shackle before they deviate. They have to say it out loud.
So, something like,
Step 4 assumes AC power. We have lost AC power. To meet the intent of cooling, I am now aligning the fire system.
I see. So the cowboy just acts, but the technician diagnoses the gap between the map and the territory, states it, and then acts to meet the intent of the original procedure.
Precisely. If they can't articulate the why, it's a violation. If they can, it's technically defensible improvisation.
And there's a warning here for the instructors, too, about training system failure.
It's a very stern warning. If a student saves the plant by improvising correctly, technically defensibly, but the instructor penalizes them for not following the procedure,
Then the system has failed, not
Yeah.
the student.
you cannot grade someone on compliance to a book written for a plant that no longer exists. If you do that, you are literally training them to fail, to die.
That is such a powerful shift. It's moving from a culture of pure obedience to a culture of mastery.
And that gets to the core philosophy of this whole document, the Bushido mindset.
Competence assumes the procedure works. Mastery knows what to do when it doesn't.
That's it right there. This isn't about telling operators to ignore the rules on a quiet Tuesday morning. It's about telling them that when the world breaks, they have to rise above the rules to save the purpose behind them.
And that's where the living organism idea comes in, replacing the org chart.
Yeah. When the hierarchy crumbles, job titles don't matter. The document says if a junior engineer has the critical knowledge about one specific pump, then guess what?
They're in charge.
They're in charge of that task. The org chart dissolves, and this living, adaptive organism takes its place, driven purely by who has the solution.
A meritocracy of survival.
It has to be.
Well, we're coming to the end of our deep dive here, and I want to leave everyone with the manifesto of the last resort. This is the very end of the module, because it feels like it applies to anyone in a crisis, not just nuclear operators.
I think it really does. It says, do not wait for permission to save the plant.
You are the bridge between the broken map and reality.
That idea that you are the bridge, that's so powerful.
I think that's something we can all take away. Whether you're managing a project or a team or a family crisis, sometimes the map is wrong, and you have to be the one to trust your understanding of the territory.
And you have to have the courage to trust your training, to trust the first principles, and to act, because in those moments, you're not just an employee anymore.
You are the background radiation.
You are the only thing left.
A truly fascinating look into the minds of people who handle the impossible. Thanks for exploring this.
My pleasure. Stay safe out there.
And keep your dog bowls focused. We'll see you on the next deep dive.